Comrades and friends, welcome to the program Global Weekly News, serial number 144. First, we go to South American country Venezuela. In 1789, US passed the Alien Enemies Act. This act states that the President of USA has the powers to order the detention and expulsion of foreign citizens from countries with which the US is at war. This law was applied in 1812 during the war between the US and the UK and during the two world wars, during which US authorities imprisoned tens of thousands of foreigners in concentration camps for several years. The law permits the imprisonment and deportation of foreign nationals without proper defense or normal judicial process, expediting the process under the pretext of national security. Thousands of Venezuelans rallied in Caracas on 18th March to protest the deportation of over 200 Venezuelan migrants from the US to a highly security prison in El Salvador. The migrants were put in handcuffs by hands and legs, and when they arrived in El Salvador, they made them get off the plane, locating them, beating them with sticks and clubs, shaved their heads and put them in jails. The Venezuelan government has condemned the US Salvadorian decision as a violation of human rights. The government informed the families of the detainees that it would do everything possible to repatriate the migrants. Nicolas Maduro, President of Venezuela, called the action of US as fascism. Second item, comrades, anti-people measures of Trump. On 20th March, US President Donald Trump signed an executive order to begin the process of dismantling the Department of Education. There is a crisis in the public education system. There is a nationwide teacher shortage. Dismantling federal education system will increase inequalities in education. Education is shifted to states. Many states will privatize education. Education of 5 crore students enrolled in the country's public schools is becoming uncertain. In its continued attack against social services and workers, the Donald Trump administration has set its sights on the US Postal Services. Workers organized with the National Association of Letter Carriers staged rallies across the country in 200 cities in defense of their livelihoods and the essential national postal services. On 21st February, Donald Trump proposed a merger between postal services and the Commerce Department. Elon Musk, world's richest man and top Trump advisor, who leads the Department of Government Efficiency, reportedly said outright during a conference, "I think logically we should privatize anything that can reasonably be privatized." 640,000 workers are employed by the US Postal Services directly. NALC, National Association of Letter Carriers president, outlined the plans to privatize the postal services are an attack on 5.15 crore people that who live in rural areas. Nearly 1 in 4 postal workers is a black man. The National Rural Letter Carrier Association, which represents US Postal Services over 130,000 rural letter carriers, is set to join the movement of postal workers against privatization with a rally at Capitol Hill on 25th March. A privatized postal service they would deliver where it is profitable. Third item, comrades. South African ambassador expelled by the United States. Ibrahim Rasool, South African ambassador to USA, expressed white supremacist character of the Make America Great Again movement in a webinar hosted by a South African think tank. He also supported the Palestine. Ibrahim Rasool is considered persona non grata and expelled by the United States. U.S. State Secretary Marco Rubio accused Ibrahim Rasool as a politician hating America in his X post. Cheering crowds thronged outside the Cape Town International Airport in South Africa on 23rd March to welcome back Ibrahim Rasool. He was welcomed by leaders of Congress of South African Trade Unions, South African Communist Party and the ruling African National Congress. U.S. hostility began to escalate after South Africa, like much of the global South, maintained a non-aligned position on the war in Ukraine. This intensified after South Africa took Israel to the International Court of Justice in January 2024 amidst its US-funded genocide in Gaza. Ibrahim Rasool said, "We must enter into trade negotiations with the US because our economy and our people need them. But we must never trade our sovereignty, lest we be told that China and Cuba cannot be our friends. Our friends are the mighty in the G20. Fourth item, comrades, Sahel Alliance withdrew from Francophonie. OAF is the International Organization of La Francophonie. Its purpose is to promote the French language and greater cooperation among Francophonie countries. But Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger, three countries of Sahel Alliance, in a joint statement, accuses that the OAF has, however, become a remote-controlled political instrument operated from Paris to suit its geopolitical considerations. Last week, the three Sahel countries announced their withdrawal from yet another French neo-colonial institution, the OAF. These three countries were founding members of the OAF. Amidst mass protests demanding the expulsion of French troops from their countries, their armies sided with the anti-imperialist movement, ousting what were domestically perceived as puppet governments of their former colonies. In Mali in 2020, Burkina Faso in 2022, and Niger in 2023, the popularly supported military governments that replaced these regimes cut off diplomatic ties with France and expelled the troops from the countries. Expelled the French troops from their countries. OAF was quick to retaliate by suspending and sentencing these countries. The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, another institution in the region regarded as neo-colonial and linked to France and the US, had gone beyond suspensions and imposition of crippling economic sanctions. Sahel Alliance withdrawal from ECOWAS last year came into effect this January. Following this, on March 17, Niger and Burkina Faso announced their exit from OAF. Mali followed suit on 18th March. The strength of popular movements in France's former colonies in the Sahel and West Africa, including in Benin, Ivory Coast, Chad, etc., OAF's influence is weakening fast. Fifth item, comrades. Demonstrations in France against racism and the far right. Hundreds of thousands of people swept through the streets of over 200 locations across France on 23rd March in a massive national demonstration against racism and the far right. The mobilizations, launched by nearly 600 organizations, including trade unions, associations, informal collectives, and left political parties, was a collective response to racism, Islamophobia, and other forms of systemic discrimination and the escalation of hate-driven rhetoric promoted by the right forces. An estimated 12 lakh people in France experience at least one racist incident every year, ranging from threats and discrimination to physical violence, even murder. Yet, only a fraction of these incidents are reported. In 2024 parliamentary elections, thousands of young people supported the progressive platform of the new Popular Front. The front came first with winning largest seats. The Nazis seized power because no one stopped them. If we don't stop the fascists from the beginning, they won't hold back. For them, the genocide in Gaza is only a first step. It serves as a vindication of mass murder. Arnaud MP of France Unbowed Party said. Sixth item, comrades. Iran's willingness to revive nuclear deal. Kamal Wandi, spokesperson of the Atomic Energy Organization of Iran, said on 23rd March that his country is ready to resume its commitments under the 2015 nuclear deal, also known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, if other parties to the deal respect Iran's rights. The deal signed between Iran and 6 other countries, 5 permanent members of the United Nations plus Germany, lifted all international sanctions on Iran in return for its adherence to certain restrictions on its nuclear program. United States, one of the signatories of the JCPOA, unilaterally withdrew in 2018 when Trump was in power and imposed sanctions against Iran. The US has claimed the sanctions on Iran were to pressure it to negotiate the JCPOA to include other aspects of its foreign and defense policies. The primary objective behind the US push for JCPOA renegotiations is to safeguard Israeli interests in the region. Iran has rejected the pressure and claimed that as a sovereign country, it has the right to follow whatever foreign policy it wants. Iran continued its negotiations with all other signatories of the JCPOA in its attempt to revive the deal. Kamal Wandi also rejected that Israel's nuclear program has any military intention, claiming that his country's nuclear program has gone through the harshest nuclear inspections by the International Atomic Energy Agency, which has established time and again that Iran's nuclear program is transparent and peaceful. Donald Trump announced a maximum pressure campaign on Iran with the objective of bringing its oil exports to zero to force it to renegotiate the JCPOA. Trump also wrote a letter inviting Iran for talks over the deal. Trump apparently gave a 2-month ultimatum to finalize the revival of the JCPOA, threatening possible military actions otherwise. Iran has called the US offer to talk deceptive and rejected it. 7th item, comrades. Israel kills 700 Palestinians in a week. Hamas-Israel ceasefire deal. First phase is over. From 1st March, second phase of the deal is to be in force. but no negotiations on second phase has taken place so far. Instead, Israel's genocide in Gaza is in full swing as the Trump administration provides Israel with all the weapons Israel needs. On 21st March, the Israeli occupation forces blew up the only cancer health facility in Gaza, the Turkish-Palestinian Friendship Hospital in central Gaza. The Turkish Foreign Ministry denounced the destruction of the hospital, which was built by Turkey. The attack is part of Israel's broader policy that aims at making Gaza unlivable. There was a new deadly airstrike by Israel that hit the surgical unit at Nasser Medical Complex in Khan Yunis in northern Gaza on 23rd March. The assault killed at least 2 people, one of them being Hamas Politburo member. Activists suggested that Israel targeted 4 non-Palestinian doctors who were frequently interviewed by Western media outlets about the crimes committed by the Israeli occupation forces. These doctors were operating for hundreds of days on intensive care unit patients and saving lives. Only one doctor survived the attack, and that doctor told that attacking hospitals is a war crime. On 24th March, 2 Palestinian journalists were also assassinated. The official death toll of Palestinians since October 7, 2023 is 50,021. Lancet, the popular medical journal, and UN human rights bodies have asserted that the death tally is 40% higher. Next we go to Pakistan. On 24th March, Pakistani authorities arrested activists in Karachi during a protest demanding the immediate release of Balochistan Ekjati Committee leaders who had been detained the previous week. The arrest followed a violent police crackdown on 22nd March in Quetta, Balochistan, where security forces used tear gas and live ammunition against demonstrators protesting forced disappearances. At least 3, including a 12-year-old girl, were killed. The next day, 23rd March, Balochistan Ekjati Committee leaders and 16 others were arrested while protesting against the killings. The authorities accused them of helping protesters forcibly remove the bodies of the victims from a hospital. In response, activists and progressive groups across Pakistan organized a National Day of Action on 24th March. 6 more people were arrested. Leader of the left-wing Mazdoor Kisan Party condemned the state's actions. Awami Workers Party also demanded the immediate release of all protesters arrested on 24th March. Human Rights Commission of Pakistan also condemned the police crackdown on protesters. Next item, comrades, again Pakistan. A multinational company worker commits suicide. Nestle worker suicide in Pakistan. Mohammad Asif Jut self-immolated on 25th February inside the premises of Pakistan's Lahore High Court in protest against the anti-worker and illegal practices of his former employer, the multinational Nestle Corporation. He died in a city hospital a few days later. Jut worked for Nestle for 16 years before being fired by the management for trying to form a union in 2016. He was terminated despite winning the case in the labor court. The court ordered his reinstatement. However, the company management delayed the execution of the order using faults in the legal procedures and inefficient judicial processes. Nestle was able to drag on ASIP's case for over 9 years. The years of court battles and lack of alternative employment caused a tremendous economic hardship for Jute and his family. He was forced to sell his home and other assets to feed his family and cover the costs of prolonged legal battle. Jute finally lost hope and self-immolated after yet another hearing on 25th February. Since his death, the left parties in the country, led by Haqq-e-Khalq Party, HKP, and Mazdoor Kisan Party, have formed an alliance with the civil society and trade union movements to seek justice for Jute and continue his battle. They have also called for donations to support Jute's wife and 4 children. The JSE claimed most of the MNCs companies continue to violate existing labor laws. Lastly, comrades, $1,000 question. Can we exit from a world of debts? 330 crore people in countries where they allocate more of their budget to pay off the interest and debt burden than to pay for either education or health services. The external debt of developing countries is 11.4 lakh crore dollars. $1 is equal to 86 rupees. It is important to understand that the money owed to foreign creditors is equivalent to 99% of the export earnings of the developing countries. In the African continent, of the 54 countries, 34 spend more on debt servicing than on public health care. Debts loom over the global south like a vulture, ready to pick at the carcass of our society. Why are countries in debt? When they gained independence about a century ago, they were left impoverished by their former colonial rulers. They borrowed money for development projects from their former colonial rulers at high rates, making repayments impossible since the funds were used for public projects like bridges, schools and hospitals, export of raw materials at low prices, and import of high-priced finished products. Ruthless policies of IMF, etc., forced these countries to cut domestic public spending and instead repay foreign debt. The countries of the global south almost entirely abandoned long-term development for short-term survival. The following methods are promoted: debt relief and debt restructuring, an appeal for foreign direct investment and an attempt to boost exports, cuts in public spending, tax reforms that benefit the wealthy, and labor market reforms that hurt the workers. The developing countries shall be forced by massive democratic movement to go for implementing alternative economic policies. Thank you, comrades. Last salam. See you next week.